Hey guys, welcome back to the Curly Reader. My name's Amanda, and today I want to share with you all of the books that I read in the month of October. Alright, so the month of October was a bit of a slow reading month for me personally. I read 8 books, which is still plenty. Most of them were audiobooks. I only read 2 physical books. One was a nonfiction and one was a middle grade. But I just didn't get a whole lot read. I did a lot of traveling in October and therefore just didn't get a lot read. If you follow me on Instagram, you will have known that my husband and I took a trip out west and visited a lot of the different national parks. We went to the Grand Canyon and Bryce Canyon and Zion National Park and just had a really, really nice time, just the 2 of us. And then after I got back, I went down to North Carolina and met 3 of my bestest best friends from BookTube and spent a long weekend with them down in North Carolina. And so it was a wonderful time, but we did not get a lot of reading done. So because of that, all the traveling and all the things and the prepping for all of it, and we had visitors in from out of town one weekend and just all the things, there was not a lot of time for reading. All that to say, life just wasn't quite what normal. That's the word I was looking for. However, I did read 8 books. Of those 8 books, I had 2 5-star reads, 2 4-star reads, 3 3-star reads, and I had 1 book that I did not rate. I had 6 audiobooks, like I said, and 2 physical books. 4 of them I own, and 4 of them I borrowed from either Scribd or the library or things like that. I read 2 middle grades, 1 YA, 5 adult books, and no graphic novels. So that's kind of the way the numbers fell. And so, yeah, I think I'm going to talk about these in order of rating. So I'll talk about the one I didn't rate and why, and then we'll do the 3-star, 4-star, and then the 5-star reads. So let's get into it. The book that I did not rate, have around here somewhere. This is going to be like the thing now, I guess, is that I'm going to have books, read them, misplace them, and then they fall into the abyss of my house. But I have this book around here somewhere. I just don't know where it is right now. But it is The Pursuit of God by A.W. Tozer. I read this with Krista from Books and Jams. She did a discussion of this book. It is a Christian nonfiction, I would say classic. I think it was written in the 50s. A.W. Tozer was a theologian and he wrote this book. It was a very short book, but it was some reading, guys. Not gonna lie, it was a little over my head. It was hard for me to follow. That's why I decided not to rate it, because the content of what was in it was fantastic, but how difficult it was to read brought it down for me, and so I just chose not to read it because I think it was probably written for someone way smarter than me, and that's fine. But for me, I had a really hard time understanding it. But that being said, I still really liked the content of it once I did read it. And Krista has on her channel the discussions that we had for both parts of this. And so if you've read this, if you're interested in the discussions, you can go check them out. I will link Krista's channel and the discussion videos down below. But I had a really, really great time discussing this with people that are much smarter than me on Krista's channel, and just picking their brain about it, that sort of thing. And so yeah, this is just about the pursuit of God and how we can continue to pursue God after we find a relationship with him. And so yeah, that's how I felt about that. The first 3-star book that I wanted to talk about is a middle grade book that was written in verse, and that is Unsettled by Reem Faruqi. This is about a girl who immigrates here. I believe she's Middle Eastern. I know she's Muslim, and she immigrates here, and her and her brother decide to join the swim team, and it's just about her and learning to fit in and kind of acclimating to the American Western style of doing things and how we talk and the way we dress and what we eat and that sort of thing. It was good. I've read other ones that have I don't want to say were better, but they pulled me in a little bit more and kept me engaged a little bit more than this one. And so this one just got 3 stars for me, but still think it's a completely valid, like, not, I don't want to say valid, but just, I think it's important that kids are exposed to these stories, and everybody has a different view on it, and everybody's story is important, and so I never want to like disregard one person's story over another, even if they're similar. And so I think that there is a lot to be learned from these, and so yeah, I would definitely encourage any middle grade kid to pick this one up and check it out. Another one that I rated 3 stars was one that I picked up because I binge watched Made on Netflix. I was recommended the TV show by another mom that I know in real life, and was obsessed with that show. Oh my goodness. I cried and cried and cried. It was heartbreaking. But the show is based off of a memoir. And so I was like, well, now I have to read the book, And so I got the book and I listened to it. It's narrated by the author. The book is also called Made, and it's by Stephanie Land, and it's her story of escaping a domestically abusive relationship and finding a way to support her and her child amongst poverty, and kind of learning how government aid works, and just all these things that were working against her, and all that. I rated it 3 stars because for me, I did not feel as engaged with the story as I think I could have. It got to a certain point where it felt like she was complaining a lot, and that was just like, I understand it, and I think there's space for that, but it was repetitive and redundant complaining, and it got a little overkill for me personally. I still appreciate the story. I will say this book really challenged the way that I was raised and some of my personal beliefs about the system and poverty and government aid, like I said, and all of those things. It challenged the way that I thought about it in a good way. It made me really think about, how do I really feel about these things as a whole? And I really appreciate this book for that, and highly recommend checking it out still, and the show as well. The show specifically, definite trigger warnings, but there's a lot to be learned from the show if you can handle it, and so and the book as well. And so yeah, definitely check those out if you're interested. And then the last book that I rated 3 stars is one that I actually buddy read. You guys, I don't know what's wrong with me. I keep trying these books and they're just, I don't know if they're just not for me. But The Winter People by Jennifer McMahon. It's not that I didn't like it. It just didn't scare me. I wanted to be scared. I wanted to be like, and I wasn't. I was like, okay. It just did. I heard that this one was like super creepy, and there was one point that I was like, ooh, but it was like, doop, done. And I was like, oh, come on. I wanted it to go further and give me more. I will say I was more scared reading Small Spaces, which is a middle grade horror book, than I was reading this. And I know that's not everybody's opinion, but it just didn't scare me. That being said, the story itself was fine. The writing was good. The story was fine. I will say there are some minor characters in here that I did not understand why they were even in the book, because we got no closure with them. We got no story. Like, they were there and then they were gone, and we never really found out why they were there or why they disappeared. Like, were gone. I don't know. So some of the storylines didn't quite work out for me. But other than that, it was fine. This is about a girl whose mom disappears, and she goes looking for her, and she finds out that the house that she's living in was like the scene of some horrific murder back in 1908 or something like that. And so, yeah. And so you get like dual timeline kind of, because you get the past storyline, what was going on back then, and the current storyline. I will say the past storyline to me was way more creepy and way more intriguing than the current storyline. So there's that as well. But I will probably be unhauling this one. All right, on to 4-star books. So my 2 4-star books. The first one is The 100 Years of Lenny and Margot by Marianne Cronin. You guys, this book, I had just seen it a bunch of places. I needed something to listen to. I downloaded the audiobook, I listened to it, and I loved this book. Like, not quite 5 stars because there were a few things here and there that I was just like, yeah, about, but it was really, really good. This might be one that gets bumped up eventually, honestly. It is about a 17-year-old girl who's terminally ill in the hospital, and she meets an 83-year-old woman in the hospital. They meet in an art class that the hospital does, and they decide that they are going to do an art project called the 100 Years. I don't know if it's called the 100 Years of Lenny and Margot, but they basically decide that they're going to make a painting for each of their years of life, and it will equal 100 years total. And so they get to know each other. You get flashbacks to like each of the years that they're doing and how old they were and what they were going through at the time. You also get present day what's going on at the hospital. And when I tell you I sobbed in this book, like a baby, you guys, I could not hold it together. There's one scene in particular that I was just like, I could not. It is some of the sweetest stuff. Like, oh my goodness. Heartbreak, broke my heart, but also just was so tender, and I loved it. And it was funny and witty, and it's just, I don't have the words. It's so good. Check it out. All right, the other 4-star book that I had this month is another middle grade book, and it was on my most anticipated middle grade releases. It is Alyssa, I should really figure out how to say her name, Brent Wiseman's new book, The Renegade Reporters, and it is about a group of kids who are part of their school's like morning announcement TV crew. They do their morning announcements like a news show, and so it's about these girls that have been on the team for a long time, and the previous year they had a little with like opening a door that they shouldn't have and recording, and their video going viral and it being an intrusion on someone's privacy, and so they kind of get kicked off the show, and they decide that instead of being mad about it, they are going to start their own news show and just upload it to YouTube. And they are going to be the Renegade Reporters, and they can go out and find news stories within their community and just kind of do their own news show. And so they decide to do that. Well, as they're doing that, they find out that the software system that their school uses for everything, for all of their assignments and their video editing software, they actually are the ones that sponsor their news program in the morning. They do, whatever. Think Microsoft Office or whatever for schools. They have been tracking all their data and selling it to advertisers. And the girls don't realize that that is a thing. They learn about what data tracking is and data brokers and things like that, and how the school is the school responsible for the data within their system that's being sold to advertisers, and where does the responsibility lie, and are the students okay with that, are the parents okay with that? It gets into like all these waivers that you have to accept, like the terms and conditions, and how nobody can read them because they're so fine print and it's all this legal jargon that nobody understands, and how they kind of trap you because either you agree to it or you just can't use their stuff. And so it's very interesting from a middle grade perspective. That was one of the things that I really liked, is it's teaching kids to be aware of what they're doing online and how it can affect what they're seeing. It talks about how it will use your data to pop up advertisements so that you're seeing things that they want you to see. And it was super interesting. Like I said, from a middle grade perspective, I think this is going to be one that I have my kids read, just because I think that the subject matter is very poignant for their age and what they're going through, and just the awareness that kids don't really have anymore of what they put on the internet. And so anyway, I gave this one 4 stars. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was great. And so yeah, check that one out if you're interested in that. All right, now on to my 5-star reads. The first of which is a reread for me, and that is Cress. I read this with the Lunaralong that's being hosted by Bookara and A Star Reads. And in October we read Cress. I didn't get to Ferris, coming soon. But I did get to Cress, and like I said, this is the third book in the Lunar Chronicles. It is a sci-fi YA fairy tale retelling series, and this specific book is a retelling of Rapunzel. And yeah, this is just a series where there is a population that lives on the moon, and they are trying to kind of take over Earth, and yeah, there's spaceships, and it's amazing. Love it. I gave this one 5 stars again because so much happens in this book. Like, I forgot how much happens in this specific book, and I absolutely loved it. Highly recommend that series. And then the last book that I have to talk about is my other 5-star read. I buddy read this with a subscriber, and that is Secrets of a Charmed Life by Susan Meisner. I'm so glad I finally loved another Susan Meisner. I read As Bright as Heaven. It is one of my favorite books. I loved it, and then I've read a few others, and they were just okay. But this one, you guys, it was so good. So good. This is one of her backlist. It is set during World War II in England, and it has to do with a 15-year-old girl, I believe. I think she's 15, because once they turned 16, they were considered adults. So she's 15 years old, and so she is evacuated. She doesn't want to be evacuated because she has the opportunity to become a wedding dress seamstress, and which is like her dream, and she doesn't want to be evacuated, but she has to be, and her little sister is there too, and it just has to do with the two of them kind of finding their way. But it's so much more than that. There's a present day storyline about an old lady telling a younger girl her story, which is the story. So, that was a little cliche-ish, but I still loved it. This book, the ending was just like, oh, so good. You guys, I loved it all the way through, beginning to end. I was hooked. Go read it. Secrets of a Charmed Life. Oh, love. So those are the 8 books that I read in October. If you've read any of these, I would love to hear your comments about them down below. Also, let me know what you loved reading in October, and I'm crossing my fingers that my reading life kind of, I can take a deep breath, spend some time actually reading some physical books this month, because I really want to do that. This month is Historathon and Nonfiction November, and I'm excited for that. So yeah, that's going to do it for today. So I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you stick around and subscribe. And until next time, see ya.